Joe Biden has finally announced his first pick to be nominated for the Supreme Court. Here's a little bit of that announcement.
And it's my honor to introduce to the country a daughter of former public school teachers, a proven consensus builder, an accomplished lawyer, a distinguished jurist, one of the nation's most prestigious courts. My nominee for the United States Supreme Court is Judge Ketanji Jackson.
I am truly humbled by the extraordinary honor of this nomination, and I am especially grateful for the care that you have taken in discharging your constitutional duty in service of our democracy with all that is going on in the world today.
Jackson had apparently long been on the short list for Joe Biden, and in previous segments on both this show and other shows on the network, we have gone through her history and qualifications. But I want to make sure that you at least understand some of what went into this choice. Jackson will be the first black female justice in the court's history and the first justice in decades with any significant experience representing criminal defendants. She also served for 2 years as a federal public defender, and she was a member of the US Sentencing Commission at a time when that panel significantly rolled back federal sentencing guidelines for many drug offenses. She also, by the way, and I'll throw this out as a potential topic of discussion, was not the pick of everyone advising Joe Biden. So James Clyburn had been pushing for Judge Michelle Childs. Joe Manchin apparently had felt the same, but James Clyburn does say, I want to thank the president for not just keeping the promise to nominate a black woman to the court, he said, but for doing it in a way that makes all of us proud. So at least putting it out there that there's no hard feelings or anything, but the so-called moderates in the Democratic Party had wanted Joe Biden to go in a different direction.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things here that are really good news. So first of all, credit where credit is due. Joe Biden has been pretty terrific on the judicial picks. Not just Judge, I almost called her Justice already, let's hope so, Judge Jackson, but a lot of his lower level picks in the appellate courts, district courts, etc., have also broken the mold and have not been as pro-corporate as previous administrations, including Democratic administrations, which emphasized business-friendly judges. Biden has not done that. It's gone under the radar, and you know how tough we are on Biden. So when I tell you he really did it, he really did do it. And so a lot of credit there. And now this appears to be a terrific pick. So she has no corporate law experience, which is great.
Are you allowed to do that?
I know, it just feels like, wait, can you put someone on the Supreme Court that hasn't pledged loyalty to the Chamber of Commerce? And he just did. He at least nominated her. And she was a public defender. I mean, it's unheard of. It shouldn't be unheard of, but a public defender on the Supreme Court, that's gonna be amazing. And then, of course, conservatives will attack her for being on the Sentencing Commission. I guarantee you that is going to be the #1 line of attack. She let out the criminals. Can you believe it? Now that was a long time ago. The reforms at that time were fantastic and sorely needed, but it doesn't matter. They'll pretend that it has something to do with the crime that's happening today, right? Yeah. And that'll be a disingenuous line of attack that is incoming in 3, 2, 1, right? But I want to go back to the other thing that Biden deserves credit for here, which was it would have been easy to give in to the conservative Republicans and Democrats that wanted him to pick Childs. The Republicans basically said, if you pick Childs, we're just going to let her on the court, okay? Lindsey Graham and others were signaling that very strongly, right? Because she was more pro-corporate. She was an employment lawyer on behalf of corporations, and I can get into the depths, but we don't have to, so because she wasn't the pick. But Republicans were saying, you better pick this one. And Joe Biden, on other occasions, goes in that direction. But not just the Republicans. Clyburn is a conservative Democrat. He happens to be African American, it doesn't matter, he's very pro-corporate. And he's the one that helped Biden win in South Carolina. And Biden made the pledge to pick a black woman for the Supreme Court in South Carolina when he was in trouble and needed to win that state. So defying Clyburn to say, no, I'm not gonna pick the most business-friendly pick that's gonna make your donors happy, James Clyburn. I'm gonna pick the better pick. hey, there's some courage there from Joe Biden. So well-earned credit. Now let's make sure that Ketanji Brown Jackson gets on the court, because this is as good a pick, seemingly, based on the information that we have now, as we've seen in a long time.
This is a huge sigh of relief. This is a huge sigh of relief because I was honestly terrified, right? There's been a lot of really terrible Supreme Court picks, even even Merrick Garland that like Obama put up, right? That was already a compromise and he didn't even get his seat. And so I was a little bit terrified of Joe Biden putting up a sort of compromise candidate that's very business friendly. I mean, like a public defender, like public defenders work so hard and they have to represent like whoever they're representing, which means that they at least to some degree have to like try to connect to people who are just like average people who need a public defender. And so somebody with that experience being on the Supreme Court, obviously they're only gonna be one person out of 9 on the Supreme Court. So they're not necessarily even gonna be the deciding vote on anything right now with the conservative Supreme Court that we have. But it really was just a huge sigh of relief because I'm pretty critical when it comes to like things like Supreme Court picks and Joe Biden. I'm not really friendly to Joe Biden, and this was deeply, deeply surprising to me that like Joe Biden picked somebody that didn't have something obviously horrible in their background.
Yeah, and you're right, and of course it remains a conservative supermajority, of course, but we have to bear in mind, and remember, like in the lead up to the elections, we were warning you, like, hey, Supreme Court's really important, think about it, and then we lost, and then Trump put a whole bunch of gargoyles on the Supreme Court. Well, it is going to take a very long time to win it back, so we need all of the wins that we can get along the way, and we generally try to like flatten down judges' ideology, but of course, some judges can be relatively more progressive on one issue rather than another. I mean, there have been, like as Cenk was pointing out, like she specifically in areas of corporations seems good in comparison to some of the others on the court that might be progressive in some areas, but not necessarily that area. We're going to be probably for the rest of our time broadcasting here, trying to get the court back to where it needs to be. And so these little victories along the way are incredibly important in getting to that.
So, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that the fact that she has a massive amount of experience and more time spent as a judge than I think any 2 others on the court, certainly the more recent ones, that does not mean that they are not going to try to make a massive spectacle out of this. It is going to get incredibly ugly. It already has been. Look at what people on Fox News have been saying about Biden's pledge to nominate a black woman, let alone the individuals. It is gonna get real dirty, so everyone needs to prepare for that.
Yeah, there was just a brief moment, and this happens a lot on Fox News. When news first breaks, they'll accidentally have somebody on air who will have an honest reaction. So they had their legal expert on, and they had Jonathan Turley on as the announcement happened, and they come back and they're like, boy, both of them were like, she is stunningly well qualified, right? This is a really good pick. You cannot question her resume and her credentials, etc. Then watch Fox News question her credentials and all of that in the ensuing weeks. But even they had a brief moment of sanity for a second there as this was happening live. Now, look, talking about her credentials, she's born to 2 public school teachers. Her dad then became a lawyer, and she said that's what inspired her. And she remembers doing her coloring books when she was in preschool, as her dad was studying in law school, and they sat at the same table. And it's a really cute story. She's got a lot of interesting stories. One of her uncles went on to get arrested for dealing drugs, very serious crime, and got a hefty sentence. I think it was a life sentence. So on the other hand, another one of her uncles became the police chief of Miami. So she has seen a lot in her family and in her life. And then she went on to get into Harvard. Remember, she had no connections. Like in the beginning, her parents are just high school teachers, okay, or public school teachers. And so she got into Harvard anyway, and then she got into Harvard Law, and then she became the editor of the Harvard Law Review. That basically means you're the top student at Harvard. And that's nothing to sneeze at. And she interned for Breyer and all those things that are amazing. And then to me though, the most telling thing was Lindsey Graham was furious. And he said, oh, I guess the radical left has won. And I was like, oh, okay, good. Okay, there's no radical left. But if he's saying radical left, then she's a good pick. Okay, so that's your bellwether right there. And I'm gonna double down on what John said. Look, Merrick Garland was kind of a very business-friendly judge to begin with, and that Obama had picked. And the Republicans blocked him. And I thought that was such a terrible thing to do, that there was an argument to be made that you hold Merrick Garland and you nominate him again just to fight back, right? No, I'd much rather have Judge Jackson. I'd be glad Garland's now Attorney General, so good enough on fighting back. And as we've seen as Attorney General, he's been pretty soft and weak. So let's go Judge Jackson.
There's kind of one thing like, okay, this is the one thing that Obama didn't do with Merrick Garland that I just like. Joe Biden, if you're watching, if you're listening, right? And and if the Republicans are trying to play hardball and they really try to run the clock for 2 years, I wouldn't put it past them. There is a nuclear option that Joe Biden has available, and that is literally just showing up at the Senate when they're at a fake recess where they show up and they say, oh, do we have a quorum? They don't ask for a quorum and then they just leave, right? Because when the Senate is officially at recess, the president could just put people on the Supreme Court. So if the Republicans really want to hold this off, there's always the option to just show up to the empty Senate chamber with one person, say, hey, can we do a quorum? Oh, there's no quorum, cool. Guess who's the new Supreme Court justice? Now, obviously it would have to get like reaffirmed after that, but after that, it would be a lot more difficult to take somebody off a Supreme Court seat than to refuse to put them on for 2 years. So
yeah, thankfully it shouldn't be necessary. I mean, they have all the votes they need. It's impossible to conceive of like 1 or 2 Democratic senators deciding to single-handedly blow this thing up. It's impossible.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. No, if a Democratic senator opposes her, there will be hell to pay. Thanks for watching the Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.